What have I done to you?
That's the bitter question Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi uttered before he was murdered. More than a decade later, post-Gaddafi Libya remains mired in poverty and violence despite efforts to restore peace. This is a very different perspective, responding negatively to the position of the Libyan state under the directors. He gradually helped this North African country become one of the richest countries on the Black Continent. Why was Gaddafi overthrown? This is Iris Rush to the world. He is a rather strange character. However, for the Libyan people, he is a great hero, always diligently searching for the path of national liberation throughout 2 world wars. At the end of May 1981, under the recognition of the United Nations, Hari Iris declared independence for the Kingdom of Libya and became the ruler of this country. At that time, much of Libya was desert with few resources. The only word plentiful in Libya at the time was landmines left over from World War II. Therefore, Iris quickly proactively shouted to the West, especially the Americans, to receive aid from them. Libya became the largest recipient of US aid per capita with more than 100 million. In return, Iris allowed them to build military bases in their country. Most famously, Hui Air Base is the largest military facility outside the United States today. Coincidentally, while setting up military bases here, the Americans discovered huge oil reserves in Libya. The Iris ministry's position changed immediately in the eyes of the West. No longer having to write letters asking for aid from Britain and the United States, the king can now make any foreign individual or organization he wants rich. 2 million more money will be created by the Libyan state to exploit oil here. However, the huge resources from oil are not used to improve people's lives but flow into the pockets of the Libyan royal family. Over time, the corruption deepened and led to the inevitable outcome of protests breaking out everywhere wanting to overthrow the government. The West has seen these subterranean waves. Both British and American intelligence during this period determined that a military coup to overthrow the monarchy of the Iris ministry was inevitable. And the figure secretly supported by the West is Abdul Adid Sahi, the ministry's chief of staff and the person who will continue Libya's pro-Western line. However, Sahi was one person slower. In history's tide, the season of Gaddafi's rise. Born 5-1904-2, he was the youngest son in a nomadic family of Arab origin in Tripoli, Tainia in western Libya. Gaddafi, as a young man, has seen the West dominate his country day by day, including the British, French and Americans. We avoid many political views. Among them, Gaddafi greatly idolized Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Dionysus and agreed with many of his political views, from his support for Arab nationalism and socialism to anti-Western imperialism. In fact, as soon as he attended the Royal Military Academy in the early 1970s, Gaddafi harbored the idea of a coup. This intention was realized in early September 1906 when Gaddafi staged a coup to overthrow King Iris and came to power at the age of 27. The coup was quick and there were no casualties. Many important figures of the old apparatus were imprisoned, including Agistri. Even when he was arrested, Sao Hui appeared surprised and exclaimed, "No coup is not at this age." It can be said that if Gaddafi was not decisive with the intention of a coup, he could have done it instead of him and changed the entire history of the world later. Post-coup, Gaddafi created the Libyan Arab League and made significant reforms. The new government sparked a revolution in agriculture, building farms and adding irrigation along the Libyan coast. Gaddafi also reformed the oil industry, most prominently the nationalization of all foreign-owned oil and gas assets. This brought Libya huge revenue. Thanks to that, in 51979, Libya's per capita income exceeded $10,000, which is higher than some Western countries such as Britain and Italy. Gaddafi used these huge resources for social welfare programs such as improving services, healthcare, education, and housing for the public. In the 1970s, hospitals in Libya grew by over 50%, doctors from 700 to 3,000, malaria was eradicated, tuberculosis and rheumatoid arthritis repelled. Gaddafi's government also stepped up literacy programs and provided free higher education. Housing construction has also become a major priority towards the goal of eradicating homelessness and replacing shabby towns in Libya. Thanks to these radical policies, Gaddafi quickly won the hearts of the Libyan public. However, the West is not very sympathetic to this man. Gaddafi is a famous leader with many controversial foreign policies aimed squarely at Western interests. Since coming to power, Hang has tightened the domestic oil industry through the nationalization of foreign oil companies. Even during the oil crisis of 51973, Libya joined OPEC in imposing an oil embargo on the United States. In addition, Gaddafi also carried out the removal of US and British military bases from Libya. The boss exports most of the members plus co-Italians and native Jews. He pushed for a Libya without Western loans. From being one of the world's poorest countries, Gaddafi turned Libya into Africa's strongest economy with 150 billion in foreign exchange reserves and no foreign debt. That means Western influence in Libya will be significantly limited. Clearly for the West, this is an implicit opposition. But that opposition is all the more dangerous considering Gaddafi's use of his national budget. A US government report on 51986 described that Gaddafi used terrorism as a foreign policy tool and supported many extremist terrorist groups. The West continuously makes many accusations affirming that Libya has funded many terrorist organizations from the Palestine Liberation Organization, the New People's Army of the Philippines, to the Black Panther Party operating in the United States. The funding is aimed at eliminating Gaddafi's husbands as well as many government officials abroad. As of 51988, many Libyan opponents living in many Western countries such as when doing West Germany, Italy and Austria had been fired. In many speeches to the Libyan public, Gaddafi even announced that he would sow terrorism in the United States and threatened to hunt down and kill American citizens. In response, the West, especially the United States, imposed many sanctions on Libya. Worsening relations with the West quickly escalated into dangerous military moves. 1908, Libya shoots down a US aircraft flying into the Gulf of Sidra, which Gaddafi claims belongs to Libyan territorial waters. So,
the odd ones through the station are...
In late 1985, the US had a Libyan-sponsored terrorist attacks at Rome and Vienna airports. Currently, 5 American citizens have been killed and all Libyan assets in the United States have been frozen. Previously, 100 days later on March 5, 1986 died, the US and Libya once again clashed in the Gulf of Sidra. As a result, 2 Libyan patrol boats were sunk.
To use electricity, 2 children's story of strike will game station of D2 Fast T and Mary Axe to support by Ghost Gaddafi Soversheni.
A month later, Libya bombed a discotheque in West Berlin, killing 1 American service member and more than 50 other American service members. The US immediately responded with a massive airstrike in Tripoli and Benghazi that almost killed Gaddafi. Things seem to have calmed down until 2-5 later on 5/1908-8. Libya carried out the bombing of an aircraft bearing the number N73, 9 PS that killed 190 American citizens. Gaddafi's extravagance and danger prompted former US President Ronald Reagan to exclaim,
"Do we not Chess network Ketametli sex.
Internationally isolated Libyans faced with this situation on May 5, 1909, Gaddafi called for the establishment of the African Union to seek support from neighboring countries. Gaddafi also aspired to create a common currency for the Black Continent called the Golden Dinar. Emails of former US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton were leaked, and 52016 confirmed this when it was revealed that Libya was holding 143 tons of gold to create this common currency. If successful, it will significantly reduce the strength of the US dollar as well as the influence of the West in Africa. All of which made Gaddafi a thorn in the side of Americans and the West that needed to be removed. However, to do that, they need a reasonable excuse. Unexpected softness.
My follow citations.
Oh, is that so? America Nicolin Forsteronia Listeria. We Wolf Mara, the free people, endorphin the world from danger.
March 5, 2 or 3 Mayhats came to Britain to launch a military attack on Iraq to overthrow Mr. Samisul's regime and eliminate nuclear weapons there. The Americans succeeded, and this event greatly affected hazelnuts. There are fears that the consequences of the war in Iraq could spill over into neighboring countries, including Libya. So in the 5200, Gaddafi suddenly changed many of his foreign policy with the West. He quickly dismantled Libya's nuclear weapons program. He accepted responsibility for the Card classroom bombing and agreed to pay up to $2.7 billion or $10 million to each victim's family. Most notable was perhaps Gaddafi's historic handshake with then British Prime Minister Tony Blair in the capital Tripoli. For the first time in nearly half a decade, a Western leader has agreed to visit Libya. Gaddafi also continuously tries to get closer to the West while meeting with leaders of countries such as Gordon Brown, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and former US President Barack Obama. He focused on rebuilding diplomatic relations with Libya's former colonizer. In response, that effort has been notable accomplishments such as a 520-kilometer gas pipeline linking Libya and Italy, a seat at the G8 summit in Italy 5209 for Gaddafi, or a hand-kissing gesture that the late Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi gave to the Libyan leader. All those efforts might have been successful, healing relations with the West had it not been for this character's appearance. This is Fanti Taibin, with the lawyer credited with bringing the Arab Spring Revolution to Libya. It all started on February 15, 2011 when this lawyer was arrested by police. For Libyans, Fatih Taibin is a symbol of justice in the country. For many years, he has always tried to find the truth and protect the families of the victims in prison, Abu Salim in Tripoli. Between 51 and 996, over 1,000 prisoners were massacred by the army for protesting detention conditions. None of the bodies have been returned to their families, and no one has been charged for the massacre. Therefore, the arrest of Fatih Xiaoping aroused the pain of many people who rebelled and protested strongly. In response, Gaddafi cracked down brutally, even dispatching helicopters to beat protesters. In just 2 weeks, nearly 300 people were killed. The excuse the West needs has emerged. United Nations swiftly passed Resolution 1973, authorizing Libya military intervention to protect civilians. But everyone knows that the West's real motive is to kill Gaddafi. Just over 6 months later, Unfriend, a post-test Cafe Bin Wee radio, they were successful. It seems that a better future than the post-Gaddafi era will come to the Libyan people. However, the UN-sponsored peace process has produced only short-lived tranquility. Libya immediately fell into a second civil war as the country was divided by two opposing governments. National Unity Government in Tripoli, led by right-wing Prime Minister al-Sarraj, backed by the UN. The remaining writing is that the government in the east ruled by General Khalifa Haftar is recognized by many countries including Egypt. Each hero's a status per what creates a complex political landscape. That chaos has turned Libya into an arena of international power where countries always have their own plans to compete for oil resources here. More than a decade on, despite many efforts to form a unity government, the Libyan people have yet to take a day of real peace. If Gaddafi was still in power today, would things be better?
Watch Code the World to me. Sit up, G on pause.
Yes.